Welcome into the Bonesville Pregame Podcast. Al Myatt joined by Kevin Monroe. Kevin, of course, great defensive back in his playing days at East Carolina. And I'm going to ask him a question, what he remembers about 1997 during the show today. But Kevin, coming off a 31-10 loss, American Athletic Conference setback to Southern Methodist last Saturday, Pirates getting ready to host Charlotte. But in that, the score deceptive to an extent because Southern Methodist pulled away basically in the fourth quarter of that contest. Pirates within 14-10 going into the fourth quarter there. But it looks like, from what we can tell, that they are going to go with Mason Garcia as starting quarterback and move Alex Flynn into a backup role. But who really knows? But that's what it appears to be.
Yeah, that game, as you mentioned, was a very close game, a very winnable game by the Pirates, and the best that Mason Garcia's played probably since he's been here overall. And he came in for Alex when Alex was struggling early, played fairly well, and then ended up having a series or two where he didn't do his best, and then he was pulled back out. I was surprised the fact that they put Flynn back in after Mason had been playing pretty well. I thought they'd leave him in there, and so a little bit of back and forth in the quarterback spot. It just never seemed to get in a rhythm offensively. Defensively, the Pirates have done what they've been doing all year. They've been hanging around, doing their thing, getting stops in the run game, making some plays in the passing game. But then in the fourth quarter, they're tired because they've been out there all game, and they have a letdown or two. I mean, you can say that about App State. You can say that about Marshall. Again, here at Southern Methodist, it seems to be in the fourth quarter, teams pull away from the Pirates because the defense has been out there too long. Offense is not putting up enough points, not getting enough first downs. And so I'm excited to hear that. Well, for one, I'm excited to see that Mason Garcia play better. It looked like he's a guy you could go out there and compete with now. He made some throws. He took off and ran a couple times, but he was decisive in the things that he did. Now, every throw wasn't great. He underthrew several receivers, which can be frustrating when you're watching from the booth, from the stands. But at least he was decisive and not just taking off and running every time. He was making some throws. So that was positive. I think he gives you the most upside. I think Pirate fans, coaches want to see him do well. So if they are in fact going to go with him and make him a starter and see how he can do, that's exciting. But he's got to play. He's got to build off of what he did last week and not go backwards.
Well, Alex Flynn did have 2 turnovers in the fourth quarter. One came after he had made a good run for a first down, and East Carolina was in position to drive and take the lead. But I think Mason Garcia did exactly what the coaching staff had envisioned he could do on the touchdown in the second quarter against the Mustangs, 4th and 2 at the SMU 6-yard line. And he goes forward, goes through contact, and gets into the end zone. And that's the kind of running that they envisioned that he would be capable of doing. And certainly that is a factor to his credit that he has that ability. 12 for 26 passing, which is not ideal in terms of completion percentage, but maybe the Pirates have figured out it's time to let him play and develop. But in that game with the Mustangs, East Carolina slipping to 0-2 in conference play and probably not realistically going to contend for a league championship in the American this year. The defense, like you said, Kevin, they got beat a couple times early on passes, scoring passes, and trail 14-0 into the first quarter. Andrew Conrad hits a long field goal. And if the Pirates had hit field goals from that range the last couple of years, you'd be looking at a lot better record probably and some bigger wins. But he got him on the board, and then the touchdown by Mason, 14-10 at halftime. You're in the game. And it did get away late from the Pirates. Turnovers were a factor late. And then SMU is a good ball club. And, you can't take anything away from them. They are in their last season in the American. They'll be going to the Atlantic Coast Conference next year. They've their financial backing has essentially allowed them to make that transformation. And that's something that the Pirates don't have. And that's something that we tend to overlook about the East Carolina program. One of the few schools in the conference at the present time without an indoor practice facility. Been that way for a long time. And then other schools have means of revenue through student fees that East Carolina doesn't have access to. So it's a struggle, and it's a financial struggle. And you work in finances, and you know what a factor that is.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And Al, you just gave me a lot to unpack there, and you're exactly right. And starting with the indoor facility, it's in the works. Obviously, they have a location for it. They start fundraising for it. They just got to get the remainder of the funds. So I'm assuming over the next few years that will come to fruition. I think the building of the tower and the way it was handled maybe set the Pirates back a little bit, but they're trying to dig their way out of that hole. Going back to the SMU game, the quarterback, his name escapes me now because I tried to forget everything about that game. But
Stone.
That's right, Stone. He was a good player, and he was accurate with his passes, but he also ran the ball well. He was smart in the decisions he made, and he's a guy that has been around a little bit and was supposedly one of the top recruits that SMU's ever had. I think back to guys like Eric Dickerson, and I'm thinking, well, maybe not, but he was a really good player. And in the fourth quarter, he made some plays that really hurt the Pirates with his feet, made a couple good throws. But from the beginning of that game, they made it their mission to attack Siobhan Revel. I say Revel because we've been saying Revel on the air for a few weeks now, and I'm being told that's not correct. So Siobhan Revel. And they attacked him time after time after time, and he gave up a couple, but he played, out of his mind because, I've never been attacked personally that many times in one-on-one go routes in my career. And so I felt for the kid because I think they probably threw 6 throughout the game, and he probably batted down 4 of them or was at least there to make sure the receiver didn't catch him. So I was excited to see that young man step up, make some plays. You got Jackson on the other side. He's obviously playing better as a freshman, 17 years old. So I like what they're doing in the secondary. As you said, they did give up a couple early, and that put the Pirates behind the 8 ball. But as the game went further in, they were more successful against the pass. And so, yeah, it just the Pirates got very stagnant in their offense. You mentioned Alex Flynn makes a good run, then throws the interception. There's a fumble in there. Lots of things happened that just kind of kept slowing down potential drives. And then the quarterback's going in and out. The running game, it was okay, but never really got going. Javius Bond, who we haven't even talked about, got banged up on the opening kickoff. We didn't get a chance to play. They've been counting on him offensively in a lot of these games. He didn't get going. Camaro Edmonds never really got going. So it was just Rajah Harris, and he didn't have a great game. Not anything on him, but they were kind of loading up that box and trying to make sure that they forced the Pirates quarterbacks to beat them through the air. So it was a struggle. It was surprising that they were able to stay in the game as long as they were, but you just can't ask the defense to stay on the field so long, and you're going to get beat every time.
Well, Kevin, Mason Garcia was the leading rusher. I think he had 38 yards. So that's not a great effort in terms of the ground game. Javius Bond, Coach Houston said Tuesday that he is day-to-day, which sounds good in terms of his potential participation in the Charlotte game coming up this weekend. And, East Carolina and Charlotte matched up a number of times in baseball. I think East Carolina has a dominant lead in that series, and they played a lot in basketball, and but never in football. And football is relatively new to Charlotte. Yeah. And they are relatively new to the FBS. And so this is going to be a first come Saturday, 2 p.m. kickoff. And I think everybody likes that time. It gives the fans some time to tailgate. Means the coaches will get home to their families before it's so late. And so it's going to be optimal time in terms of the kickoff time. And Coach Houston is saying the weather's going to be good. So great day to get out and see the Pirates play this first game against Charlotte. Both teams are 1-5. Both teams are 0-2 in league play. And as I mentioned, East Carolina is the favorite in this game. But playing the 49ers for the first time, Kevin, and they have a mobile quarterback. Apparently, their quarterback is their leading rusher.
Yeah, so you can kind of compare UNCC to UAB. You remember when UAB came on the scene, they went from FCS to FBS relatively quickly because they were in a hotbed of recruiting, right? They were right there in that Birmingham, but Alabama area where they can recruit from Alabama and Georgia and get all those players that the Alabamas and the Auburn's and the Georgias don't want. And so that's the same thing. When I see Charlotte, that's how I feel about it, because Charlotte football is really good. It's kind of probably the best football in the state of North Carolina. They've got several private schools there that are really good, several public schools that are really good. And so the kids that don't go to UNC and State and ECU, or across the border to Tennessee and Georgia, those kids can go to UNCC. And so they have their pick of very good talent. So they always have really good skill position players. And because of that, they've had kind of a meteoric rise through the FCS and into FBS football, and now they're in the American Conference and they're doing pretty well in general. Not doing great this season. You mentioned Jalen Jones, the quarterback. He's been kind of going back and forth with Trexler Ivy. He was the other quarterback in terms of who was going to play, kind of like the situation that the Pirates are in. But he's got a higher completion percentage of 60% than Trexler does. He's also, as you said, leading the team in rushing. So he is that dual threat quarterback that makes it tough on defenses. I mean, that's the one thing you can't plan for, because you get a good rush upfield into the backfield. You got good coverage in the back end, and all of a sudden the quarterback skates out of that pocket and takes off and run. There's not a whole lot you can do. You can put a spy there, but more often than not, the quarterback is more athletic than the spy, and it just doesn't work out. So you've got to find a way to keep him in the pocket, keep him from getting out of there. Make him throw the football. He's only averaging about 70 yards passing per game. So make him throw the football and not beat with his legs. They're averaging about 15 points scoring every game. So this is not a prolific offense by any means. And you never want your quarterback to be your leading rusher. So they struggle to do a few things, both run and pass. And so you'd hope that your big guys up front can get some pressure on him, get him on the ground, or at least force him into some throws that he doesn't want to make. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach this game, but more than likely he's going to be the starter and he's going to play most of that football game if he's playing at least decent.
Kevin, when you were playing, I think East Carolina got more players out of Eastern North Carolina. And the Pirates recruit South Carolina, Georgia, Florida pretty extensively now. And those are good areas for high school talent, no argument there. But I think the in-state games used to mean more, perhaps personally, to players than to the players that are in the program now. And I remember when Chuck Amato was coaching NC State, and he got a lot of players out of Florida. And it was said that the Florida State game meant more to the Wolfpack players at that time than did beating North Carolina. And if you don't beat UNC to a regular extent at NC State, you're not going to be coaching there that long,
That's right.
What's your thoughts on the roster makeup in terms of what means the most to the Pirate players today in terms of emotion personally?
Well, with the transfer portal, that has changed, right? It used to be, you recruit your home area first, and then you expand into places like Florida and Georgia because they play good football, and you try to get out of there what you can to build your program and be good right away, right? So even during the Logan era, we always had players from Florida and Georgia specifically, but he made it a point to recruit Eastern North Carolina. I think Morris Foreman was probably the first big recruit out of Eastern North Carolina, at least under the Logan era. And so he comes in, he does well, and then Marcus Crandall's the Eastern North Carolina kid, Troy Smith, myself, Jamie Wilson. We started to get a lot of guys, the twins from J.H. Rose, the Adams twins, Chris Howell, Rod Emery. We started to get a lot of guys either from Rose or Conley or neighboring schools. Terrence Copper was the Eastern North Carolina kid, and so over the years, the program has been successful getting those kids. Now, in the state of North Carolina, let's be honest, in the state of North Carolina, if you're a really good player and UNC Chapel Hill wants you, more than likely you're going to go there. They get their pick of the litter because of their facilities, because of their Jordan deal, because of their basketball program. Everybody thinks they're the elite school in terms of athletes. So they usually get their pick of the litter. But in Eastern North Carolina, people really take pride in East Carolina. The kids all know East Carolina. They see them on TV. They come to the stadium and see them. So they can get those kids if they really recruit them hard enough. I think that they are. Will Bland's over at Rose coaching. He's a former Pirate. So, I know that they know what's going on in the area, and they're trying to get the better players. But with the transfer portal happening now, you get the best high school players you can in the state, and then you go out in the neighboring areas to try to get players, and you go to the portal. I've said this before, but Deion Sanders said I might bring in 4 or 5 high school kids this coming off season. The rest are coming from the portal, and that's how you win now. I hope that there's some regulation that comes in and says, okay, you can only offer so many scholarships through the portal. The rest have to go to high school kids because it's hurting high school players. And eventually, it's kind of like coaching, right? With coaching, where one coach gets fired, he ends up in another place, and it's the same coaches going everywhere. It's the same kids, right? If you keep taking out of the portal, everybody's playing with the same kids, and eventually you got to get high school players coming in to refill the portal or refill rosters. So it's different nowadays. And you're right. A lot of us that came to East Carolina either could have gone to state or ECU or Carolina or other places in state, but chose to come to East Carolina, or we were snubbed by some of those schools in the state and ended up in East Carolina. And so we used to take it personal. And I personally could have gone to NC State. I chose East Carolina, and I kept track. I kept mental notice because State didn't offer me until after East Carolina had offered me, and I accepted. And so I took that personal. And so when we played State, we won 2 out of 3 times. And, I had some of my better games. And so you remember those things, and that's why those rivalries are important. But you're right. If all the kids are coming from out of state, those rivalries don't mean as much. Obviously, there's no rivalry with UNCC because we never played them before. But that's certainly one of those kind of regional games that could become a rivalry in the years to come.
Kevin, let's turn back the clock to 1997. And that, I guess, was your sophomore year in the East Carolina program.
It was.
The Pirates were 1-5 at the outset of that season. And then wins over Memphis, Louisville, Houston, Cincinnati. What used to be cream of the American. Those were Conference USA games at that time. But kind of your recollection, because East Carolina's 1-5 now, and we like nothing better than to see a 4-game winning streak in conference play.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the first year for the Pirates in Conference USA play as well, because I remember in 1996 we went 8-3 and didn't even get a bowl bid because we were not in a conference. Mm-hmm. And so, 1997, first year in Conference USA. A very slow start to the season. I wasn't even starting at the time. I was playing a bunch of special teams, but I wasn't starting at corner. I was rotating in. We had some older guys that were playing. And as that season went on, I earned a starting job and got some starts in there. But, we started off really, really slow, and, things weren't looking good. And, it was, ho-hum and fire Coach Logan and this and that, even though we had just come off a Liberty Bowl win in 95 and then an 8-3 season in 96. Anytime you start off 1-5, you're going to get all those kind of things coming from the noise. And so, we were able to turn it around, get some really, really nice wins. We weren't quite able to finish the season out and get bowl eligible. And that was the only losing season in my 5-year tenure here. But it was tough. I enjoyed seeing the guys rally around the offense, rally around the defense, and get some crucial wins there to kind of salvage that season.
Well, Kevin, the Pirates and the 49ers, they're like 2 tenants at the boarding house, and there's 1 pork chop left on the table. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to get after it Saturday, I'm sure. And let's talk about that Bonesville tradition, Kevin's keys to the game.
I think it starts intrinsically, right? We have to look at the Pirates and what can they do better before we even focus on UNC Charlotte. So I would say first and foremost, the quarterback position is huge. If it's going to be Mason Garcia, he's got to take care of the football. He's got to move the chains. We got to find a way to get first downs, whether it's in the running game, in the passing game. We've got to have some balance there. So from the quarterback position, I'm looking for some leadership. to get these chains moving. Moving on to the offensive line, they've got to control that. UNC Charlotte's not bad. They've got 15 sacks. They're not giving up a ton of yards per game. They're good about 25 points a game, which is pretty good in this day and age. So their defense is not bad. They've got to control that line of scrimmage and open up that running game. Mason Garcia cannot be the leading rusher on Saturday. One of those running backs has got to get it going. If Bond is back, great. If not, Harrison, Edmonds, and Gunn have to get that thing going. So control the line of scrimmage up front. Quarterback's got to show some leadership, get that thing going. And then defensively, Jalen Jones is the key, right? He's the quarterback. He runs the football. He can throw the football. We've got to contain him, keep him in the pocket, keep him from beating the Pirates with his legs, make him throw the football. So if they can get those three things done, line of scrimmage, good leadership from the quarterback spot, and then containing Jalen Jones, they can get this win.
All right, Kevin, and I'll be listening to the Pirate Radio Network to hear your insights on Saturday. Looking forward to that. And looking forward as well to talking with you next week on the Bonesville Pregame Podcast.
Appreciate it, Al.